Ready. Play.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. I am in Western Germany. Nick, you are sort of central, sort of northern. Where do you draw the line? Because you're near Stoke, right?
Yes, I'm slap bang in the middle of the United Kingdom.
Yeah,
That's
but does that
basically
make
what I would say.
southerners call you northern and northerners call you southern?
Yeah. If I tell anyone who lives locally to me that we're in the north, they look at me deeply insulted.
Okay.
So, despite even though I am from one of the furthest southern points you can get in the UK, at which point anywhere north of Bristol is the north.
Got it. Zach, what about you? How do you geographically define yourself? That's the word I'm looking for.
Well, I am stoked to be here, Nick, and John as well. Thank you. I am in Durham, North Carolina. A lot of people actually call it the center of the universe. It's a wonderful and very important global city. Population 200 and something thousand.
All right, similar population to Bonn, and maybe Nick. I don't know. You're probably a little bit less than 200,000.
Oh, it's gonna be half the size.
Hold the phone though. I recently learned the metro area that Bonn is a part of is like 15 million people. I had no idea how
many? How many?
It's like 15 million people.
15. Yeah, 15. Yeah,
it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge. I think, I'm not sure exactly the population of Moscow. I think it's a bit over 12, but I think it's the most densely populated part of Europe. I think.
Wow.
I don't know where Istanbul. There's probably Muscovites and Istanbulians. I don't know what they call themselves, or maybe Constantinopolians who are tuning in. Yeah, there you go. How about that? You didn't expect Constantinople to get in on this.
No. Would you call it the Manhattan of Europe?
What, this where I am?
Yeah.
Or
yes.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, for sure. What about Roland Garros? I mean, that was probably center of the tennis world for a couple of weeks at the end of May, beginning of June. And arguably this match, Nick, is, I mean, it's good. It's number one, by the way. Our audience tuning in will already know that. So we're not giving away any crazy things there. But I mean, it's undisputed number one for this year, Nick, but perhaps bigger picture. Is it sort of in the pantheon of the greatest matches of all time? On the men's side?
It has to be. I remember when this came out and I decided to go down a tennis rabbit hole and kind of look up, okay, well, what is the pattern when we look at the matches that we declared like greatest of all time? And generally it's 1v2 going 5 sets in a Grand Slam final and it going the closest possible fifth set you could think of, or at least past 6-6, up to that point. So maybe more like actually past sort of 5-5, if you're going to include the 2012 Australian Open final in there. But yeah, for me, this is going to be in the shortlist for greatest matches of all time. It is definitely the greatest French Open men's match of all time, hands down. Don't think there's anything else that we would have seen in previous generations at the French Open, at Roland Garros, that would compete with that. Definitely not in a final. So yeah, definitely 100% greatest Roland Garros men's final of all time. I will still hold to Federer and Nadal 2008 being the greatest overall, but this can't be far behind.
Zach?
For me, this is unquestionably the greatest match of the 21st century. I don't know enough about pre-1998 tennis to say for sure it's the greatest match of all time. But I just want to go through a few of the greats. McEnroe, Borg. I've watched those matches, not just the highlights, but I've watched them in their entirety with commentary. For me, this stands a full head and shoulders above those matches. This tops, some of the Agassi-Sampras matches. The match the tournament that remains my favorite personal tournament of all time was Goran Ivanisevic's Wimbledon run in 2001.
Yeah,
but certainly that was not more enjoyable, and the stakes were not higher than this match. And I got to tell you, volume matters too. The fact that it was, 5 hours and 40 something minutes, something like that. It wasn't just that it was a great match. It was that you got your money's worth as the viewer, as the broadcasters. Nick and I think we're both like emotionally spent by the end of this. Can't imagine what it was actually like to play that match. This was the greatest match of our lifetimes. It's certainly the greatest match that I've ever watched live. And it was just such a pleasure to do it with the Talking Tennis community and with Nick.
5.5 hours. Backhand. It's a great serve from Alcaraz.
Alcaraz now has 7 championship points. We know that a championship point does not mean that things are going to end.
9-2 Alcaraz. It is
1 hour and 43 minutes since the Sinner match point, by the way. Wow.
That's 2 hours ago.
Yeah, and anybody that thinks the tennis the major should be 3 sets, just like take that opinion, stick where the sun don't shine. This is awesome. I cannot imagine wanting to give this up.
A first to 10 tiebreak to decide this, as it is in the decided sets of all majors. Backhanded play from Alcaraz. Sinner's going to take the cross-court final. Alcaraz is there for the winner for championship.
Oh, he's done it! He's done it! He's done it!
French Open final to win his 2nd title, 5th Grand Slam. What on earth was that match? What a way to win it.
It's going to be tough to top, but we got another decade of these two guys playing each other, so who knows?
It does. I mean, actually, we're kind of almost, and that's it. We're done. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It's my fault. I've gone for too big a picture, which really should be the last 5 minutes rather than the first 5, but doesn't matter. Listen, what will we think? It was 5 hours 29, by the way. I've just checked, but I actually had 5:29 in my head. But you're right. I think it ticks all the boxes. It has all the ingredients to be one of the greatest of all time. And we'll get into those ingredients bit by bit as we go through this episode. But let's begin with our thoughts, or let's begin part 2 of our beginning with our thoughts going into the final. I'll share mine, and then I'll come to you, Nick, first. But mine were, the backdrop is Jannik Sinner obviously not playing for 3 months due to the suspension that he had from February through to May. Was he going to get the reps in quickly enough to get up to speed and have either a good or amazing French Open? Of course, he got to the final in Rome, lost to Carlos Alcaraz there. And as you and I, Nick, share this belief, often Rome, we do see it as a precursor to the French Open. So I certainly had that in my mind going into the final. And therefore, I think I gave an edge of some description to Carlos Alcaraz. What were you thinking, Nick?
We were on the same page. Going into this, Carlos was the defending champion. He was he'd won Rome, similar conditions, beating Sinner in that final quite comprehensively in the 2nd set, where Sinner ran out of gas a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
And he'd beaten Sinner at this point the previous year as well, the semi-finals of 2024. So everything to me was kind of building up to maybe Carlos has got the matchup on clay in his favor. He might have a bit more kind of match reps under his belt. As you were talking about, like the more momentum, more kind of match readiness. Obviously, the only thing that really kind of went in Sinner's favor was, he was still the world number 1, and Carlos Alcaraz was the only guy who could beat him. And I was interested to see how he would respond to that situation.
What were you thinking going into this match? Of course, Alcaraz was in the midst of what was going to turn out to be a pretty epic, not unbeaten run, but one of those runs where we go, he's only lost once in 10 matches, 20 matches, 30 matches, which would continue all the way to the Wimbledon final. And this was kind of in the middle of that run because he'd won Monte Carlo as well as Rome. He missed Madrid through injury, and he did get to the final in Barcelona where he lost to Rune. But yeah, if Sinner's form was good, Alcaraz's was pretty epic at this point. And so what were you thinking, Zach?
So honesty is important. And so I think I just got to get this out of the way. I am a total Alcaraz homer. I think the parlance of our times is that I might be a bit of a stan, if you will. I love Carlos Alcaraz. When I came back to tennis, I tried to play with the racket he uses before it absolutely demolished my arm, because there's nobody that I see having more fun out there who looks more fun to emulate. And so I love Carlos Alcaraz. And so I believe that he was going to win, in part because of the form he's in part because of the previous final, and also because, look, it's been long enough now and Sinner's gotten the results, but he had this looming thing over him, which was this suspension. And I think at this point it's largely behind him, but it was very much ongoing. Whether that was fair or not, that's for somebody smarter than me to decide. But like, it was out there and it was in every comment section and it was just inescapable for him. And then he raised his level and Alcaraz raised their level to the point where it just became silly to talk about that anymore because the product was so good. So I thought Alcaraz was going to win. I thought it was going to be close-ish, but certainly had no idea what we were in store for at the French Open.
I actually think what we saw in this final actually sort of then became a new benchmark for this rivalry, bearing in mind they'd also had some pretty epic encounters before, probably none more so than at the US Open in 2022. But now this is the benchmark, and we always look at this match as, like, I remember the Wimbledon final kind of going, don't think it can live up to the French Open final, but you never know. And that's probably what we'll always be thinking every time they play each other.
I'll go a step further, John. Not only are they playing against each other anymore, they're playing against ghosts. They're playing against tennis legends. Like, they are playing against their place in history. Every match from here on out, it carries collectively more weight. I mean, and this wasn't the first match where that was the case, but it really is, to me, a before and after moment. I mean, after that final, the tour was theirs unequivocally. And until somebody else breaks through and shows otherwise, it just belongs to them. It's like Novak Djokovic, the torch wasn't passed. It was wrested from his hands by these two guys. And it's just incredible what we're seeing out there.
Alcaraz also started to, this is also a little bit towards the, well, Alcaraz started to build a lead over Sinner in the head-to-head as well, didn't he? Which, you know, had a couple of twists and turns, but I think they were pretty much neck and neck. And then Alcaraz won a few matches in a row, of which, also spoiler alert, this ends up being one of them. If there's somebody watching this and doesn't know what happened at the end and who won the title, well, A, I've just messed it up, but B, I'm not even sure what you've been doing for the last 6, 7, 8 months. But there is another element to the final as well that probably goes in Jannik's favor. Is it fair, Nick, to say that going into the final, he had been the more serene of the two? He didn't drop a set. Alcaraz had his usual sort of small hiccups without us ever thinking he's necessarily going to go out against Marajan and Jamur in rounds 2 and 3. Shelton went, I would say, as close as Shelton could go to Alcaraz on the clay, pushing him to 4 sets, but the first 2 sets were very close. And then also in the semi, Musetti was the better player for a set and a half, maybe, until he faded away, as often he does when it gets super physical. So is it fair to say that although we both thought Carlos would win, Nick, did he look slightly better going into the final, or did it not really matter too much?
I don't think it mattered too much because it's Carlos. The only time we've ever seen Carlos demolish his way through a draw is the 2025 US Open, and that's the most recent Grand Slam that we've had. By this point, we kind of treated Carlos dropping a set here or there on the way to a Grand Slam title as par for the course, and Sinner being a bit more efficient in the way he got through, being kind of the norm for him as well. Like Sinner potentially having problems, that's become a more recent development maybe post this match. But and also I think we overlook how much of a battle, even though it was straight sets, the Djokovic match was that Sinner had in the semifinals.
Yes.
Like with 3 sets that were pretty competitive. Djokovic could have won 1, maybe even 2 of those sets. And then that complexion looks very different. And so they're both coming into this off obvious battles. But yeah, if you look at scorelines, yeah, why not? But if you look at kind of context of this is normal for Alcaraz. Oh, Sinner had a bit of a tough one in the semis. Like, I think they were both pretty warmed up for this encounter.
It was, of course, Jannik Sinner who would draw first blood in this encounter.
Little Rambo reference, okay.
Oh, right.
It was a war. It was a
Nick,
war.
don't we say that quite often? I often do it in live commentary, and I'm like, someone breaks serve or wins so-and-so draws first blood. But we say that quite a bit in the UK, right, Nick?
Yeah, that's a British thing.
Yeah, we say it quite a lot. So I
it's
didn't know
not
it
a
was in
Sylvester
Rambo,
Stallone Rambo thing. That is, he stole that from the UK, not the other way around.
Yeah. Basically, drawing first blood. It's kind of a dueling reference. It's who gets first blood in the duel. That's where it comes from.
And if anyone remembers Monty Python, then with that scene and he chops both his arms and legs off, and then he still says, "We'll call it a draw." Well, yeah. Anyway, that was probably the way Sinner had dismantled everyone en route to at least the quarters. Anyway, maybe even the semis. I would say Sinner was certainly dismantling people in a similar way. But anyway, Monty Python tick. But yes, Sinner drew first blood, wins the first set. So in fact, in a way, kind of, Alcaraz gets the first break, by the way. Alcaraz gets the first break, but then Sinner breaks back immediately and ends up winning the first set. So with all that in mind, we kind of threw our pre-match predictions out the window, did we, Zach?
Oh yeah, we absolutely did. And I think just one of the things I want to come back to is Jannik Sinner. He plays with his head. He just doesn't make mistakes, and I think that that's part of what allowed him to get back into this match and then seize the lead. But Carlos Alcaraz plays with his heart, and it's part of why he has these brain farts pretty every tournament. It's why he loses sets and occasionally matches to players he has no business losing sets and matches to. But I think it's the thing that allows him to just get over that last little bit. It's also why neither of them can ever be out of a match, in my opinion, right? Unless they're injured. You look at Sinner, he can always make you beat him, and he is the hardest guy on tour to go out and just beat because his rally ball is harder and stronger and more accurate than everybody else's. And then Alcaraz, you can never count him out because he's got the magic. He's got the vision. And so, yeah, I think both Nick and I were like, ooh, we might have got this one wrong. Certainly I felt that way after the first set. And then I really felt that way after the second. And then somewhere, in the third, it was like, this is Carlos Alcaraz we're talking about here. It's never over. And so it was just such a whirlwind of emotions up and down. I doubted myself. I doubted the tennis. I doubted the results. I had no idea what was going to happen. I laughed. I cried. I lost 10 pounds. This is the greatest match of all time.
So you two, of course, were doing a watch along for that as well. And I mean, I know you've touched on it already, but I'm reminding our audience. So, you guys were in the hot seats for about 6 hours, basically, because I was a little bit before, but also during and then afterwards. I'm actually just going to read Daniel Harris's minute by minute sort of, or game by game live blog for The Guardian regarding the first set, but also the game when Sinner serves this out. And the reason I mentioned the fact that you did a watch along, I'm just wondering if you two can remember this moment. So this is his words. There's a pause. It's at Sinner 5-4. And it actually gets to 30 all. So there is a moment where Alcaraz looks like he might well break back. There's a pause as Alcaraz has dust in his eye. Then 2 loose shots means we wind up at 30 all. So it may even have gone love 30. And a backhand is then sent wide, which gives Sinner a set point. The champ then, that's obviously Alcaraz, thwacks another backhand, this time into the tape. The ball leaps up and flies wide. So it's obviously one of those that hits the tape and then goes out. And so maybe, Nick, we also needed Sinner to win the first set to have the epic. And one other thing I'm just going to mention is that also here in Daniel Harris's blog, I want to highlight what's wrong with their shirts, asks Michael Meager, because obviously one of those things where you can just write into the Guardian live. And the response from Daniel Harris was, Sinner looks like Luigi, Alcaraz like a cartoon convict. I am a big fan of the Alcaraz outfit. So much so, I tried to look for the shirt recently, but unfortunately, tennis and the way it is, it's quite annoying because with tennis, they sort of delete products after a few months, right? Go on, Nick, your thoughts, first of all, on any of what I've just said.
I mean, look, I know that, the Hamburglar is more of an American thing than a British thing, but that is the comparisons I've seen and heard for Alcaraz's outfit. But if you're British, you won't know that reference. But going back to what was kind of being previously said, like people saying, maybe our predictions were wrong. Absolutely no. I was waiting for Carlos Alcaraz to win a set up until the end of the third, and I was like, there's no way this match is going to be straight sets. It was too good. It was too competitive. It was too close. That first set, you had 4 games of them fighting tooth and nail to try and break each other and couldn't quite break through. And then we get an exchange of breaks at 3-all. And then, it was like the first set kind of played out. And I don't think people remember the MTO that Alcaraz had for the thing in his eye because it was bothering him.
Oh, okay. Okay.
He did have someone looking at it. Yeah, there was a guy looking at it.
Yeah.
So that did hit. That mean that dip around about the end of the set was about right. I do also think Sinner was playing a level that, like, for a lot of the match, he was kind of finding ways around Alcaraz. And did Sinner need to win that first set? Maybe, but even so, I think the match was the way it was that I'm not fully convinced about that. I think Sinner would probably still have won set 2, may even have won set 4 if Alcaraz got nervous. And we still would have got the 5-setter. Like, there's a few sets in there that definitely could have gone either way. Like, when we get to set 2, like, I feel like Sinner kind of just about got over the line. Alcaraz probably should have stolen that set. And Alcaraz did steal a later set from Sinner that maybe Sinner should have won. So there's lots of if, buts, and maybes. But this match was always going to be 5 sets, regardless of what order everything got won in. And we were just waiting. If Alcaraz had won the first set, I would have been waiting for Sinner to win at least one set.
I have a question for y'all really quickly, which is, watching this match and at least in my memory, it felt like the level started at 10 and just went to 11 and then 14 and then 15, and it only seemed to get higher. And the pressure seemed to not intimidate them, but it seemed to take to help them reach a level that is not attainable to mere mortals. Was that how y'all felt watching this too, or am I, kind of mythologizing it in my head?
Yeah, I feel like that too. There might just be, but we'll come to that probably right at the end as we sort of talk about the 5th set, where it might just for a few minutes slip. But there's loads of epic twists and turns, of course. But I know what you mean. It gets better and better and better and better. And for Sinner in these first 2 sets, also it was getting better and better and better. And he gets to 6-4, 4-1. And you're thinking, wow, this is not the match that I was necessarily expecting. At least that's what I thought. However, Alcaraz, of course, he's never done. He comes back and he breaks back. So 4-1 was just one break, I think, but it still feels on clay as well that, because obviously who knows where it can go, and it could soon get to 6-4, 6-1, 6-4, 5-1 certainly. But anyway, he does break back and they end up going to a tie break. And this is a tie break that Sinner would win. He does win it. Of course, he wins it to 4, I think, doesn't he? So I'm just looking at the final point. Sinner nets a forehand. This is during the tiebreak, but offered a second serve. He conjures up yet another backhand return that takes control of the point. Alcaraz, though, stays in it, hoists a cunning lob that can't properly be dispatched via backhand overhead. One of those, I guess, crazy ones. And a glorious forehand pass. Annihilated cross saves the first set point. So this is Alcaraz saving the first set point. But the next rally, though, Sinner finds a monster of his own, hurling every part of himself into a flat riposte, and it's too good. Sinner leads by 2 sets to love, and it's a long way back for the champ from here. Nick?
A long way back, but as I said, we still believed. And especially, I remember during the watch along, like, I was fully saying this match is too good not to, to be straight sets. This match is too good to be straight sets. It did feel like Carlos was going to get something. He'd done something, like, I think he'd got some momentum off the second set, even though he'd lost it. And that would prove to be the case in the third, as I do feel like Sinner had a slightly sluggish start to the third set, had to fend off break points in his opening service game. And then Alcaraz eventually got him for 3-1. But yeah, I think Alcaraz was always going to be there, was always chasing, and the level was just, as you guys have said, it was so good. It was going up and up and up, and that's one of the amazing things about this match. Like, their speed and athleticism from point 1 was insane. To maintain that through a full 5-hour contest is something that is special. Like, when you think about some of the other matches that have been talked about, that's what's going on. And then still playing their best stuff towards the end, which we'll get to, that 5th set still being pretty special. That's what made this good. But in this moment in the third set, maybe this was the set that, for most of it, had the least interesting about it up until when Alcaraz served for it.
Right, so Alcaraz gets to a 5-2 lead. That's just one break, but it is obviously, it's a decent, healthy lead. However, Sinner holds and then actually breaks Alcaraz's serve. So Alcaraz is serving for the third set. Again, I'm sure there's many of our listeners and viewers don't remember this, and I can understand why because of what's to come. But yeah, Sinner, and there's a comment here as well about the return from Sinner had been a huge factor during sets 1, 2, and then also on the break here for 4-5. I mean, really, how epic a comeback does that make it from Alcaraz in a way? that actually he gets broken when serving for the third set, but Alcaraz then has a break of his own to take that third set by 6-4. Zach.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a couple other things I just want to note. The crowd was one of the other things that was not going to let it be a straight set match, right? And so I think, Nick and I over and over again on the broadcast, like, even when we couldn't hear them, we could feel them going nuts. We could feel the impact they were having. So that it wasn't just the pressure lifting them, it was the crowd. And I know that at times the French crowd can be controversial. I love it. I love how into it they get. I love how rowdy they get. I love how they influence and impact matches. That's part of the game. And then the other thing I just want to make sure to note is tennis is not an endurance sport in the traditional sense. But when you watch matches like this, it's clear that at least in the modern game, but really I think since the 50s, if not before, there has been such an enormous endurance component. And I think that one of the reasons that I'll always ride for tennis players being the greatest athletes on earth is because they have to have the quick twitch, they have to have the endurance, they have to have all these different types of athleticism. They're thinking constantly, they're making adjustments, and there's no real coaching during it. And we just saw everything wonderful about tennis in this match. And then just want to say it one more time. The crowd was awesome. They were going absolutely bananas. They wanted a 6 and a 7 set. They were not ready to go home. At that point for me, Nick, I can't speak for you, but I was pretty tired. I was ready for it to when we reached the end, I was like, okay, I'm sad this is ending, but I'm glad we're here because my in-laws were in town and I was starting to miss family obligations because it just went so long.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I will say, there's that the famous awards ceremony. I think it was Nadal and Djokovic.
Australia, 2012.
Yeah. And they're just like melting into the court. Yeah. I sort of thought we would see that out of Alcaraz and Sinner, but they look fresh enough to at least play another tiebreaker.
Yeah, maybe they were both of them slightly younger in their careers. I'm just trying to wonder how old Novak and Rafa were in 2012. I guess they were maybe not far apart though. I think Rafa and Novak would have been mid-20s, I would say, as opposed to early 20s.
Yeah, I think Rafa was 24 and Novak was 23. Okay. No, Rafa was 25 and Novak was 24.
Yeah.
25, 24, because I know they're pretty close in their ages. And Jannik and Carlos too. In the fourth... Younger. Sorry, go again.
Sinner Alcaraz slightly younger.
Yeah, just slightly younger, yeah.
I do want to just kind of toss this out there. I think that the best matches we're going to see from them are going to be on clay. Okay. I think that they both have such explosive games. They can do so much. I think the slower surface really makes it creates the best product, right? They just can hit too many winners on grass courts. If it's a traditional grass court, the slower versions, maybe not. I think I also just personally, I prefer the aesthetic of clay court tennis over hard courts. And so not only did we get the best match of all time, it happened to be on the perfect surface to highlight their strengths and stylistic differences.
That's why the tournaments are slowing down the courts for Alcaraz and Sinner, right?
Comments in the section below. Comments in the section below, people. Okay, set 4. It's probably the set that makes this match, elevates, not makes, that's the wrong word, elevates it just to another stratosphere because of the quality, but of course, because of what happened towards the end of this set. And of course, what we thought was towards the end of the match. So it's nip and tuck. It's 2-1 to Jannik Sinner. They're actually holding serve, and they both hold serve all the way until 4-3. So in this 4-3 game, so it's Alcaraz serving at 3-4, I should say. Alcaraz gets broken. Now, then Jannik has 2 bites at the cherry, but we're assuming he might only need 1. The first bite of the cherry is going to be on the Alcaraz serve at 3-5. I think I'm getting this right. Do interrupt me if I'm not. So Sinner's going to get a go at it on his own serve. But first of all, he's going to have a go at it on the Alcaraz serve. And as I said before, Sinner's return game was a 10 out of 10 this day. And it certainly was a 10 out of 10 for the first 3 points, because we get to the moment that probably, or I think definitely, makes this match go from one of the greatest of all time to that top 3, top 4, top 5, top 1. I know Damien is a fan of putting this at 1 conversation. 3-5, love 40. Nick, what are you thinking and what do you remember about these 3 points?
I'm like, this match might end up at a bit of a damp squib because it's going to end up in 4 sets. Sinner's probably going to get one of these 3 break points. Maybe Alcaraz is kind of done at this point. No, he's not, because a combination of Alcaraz absolutely going for it and Sinner maybe being a slightly tentative.
Yeah, there was one point definitely, Nick, where and it might have been, there was a return that he put long. This is Jannik, I think. And there was another point when he possibly was just a tiny bit passive. I tell you who wasn't passive and chilled out and cool, and that was Jannik Sinner's mum, Zach. Do you remember her in the crowd?
Oh yeah,
I do, and I gotta say, that was a great parent-child moment, or a series of moments. Like it was very momly. It was very sweet. She was as into it and as full of emotion as he is, icy and cool and calm and collected on the court. I just also want to say that, like, as this match was unfolding, and as Alcaraz was fending off these these championship points to stay in it, this kind of, we started to begin to discuss, oh wow, if Alcaraz comes back and wins this is a backbreaker. This is a confidence breaker for someone like Sinner. This is how somebody goes from being Lance Armstrong-esque to Jan Ulrich, right? And after this tournament, after Alcaraz came back and won it, I thought, wow, is he just going to be the 1A? Sinner will be the 1B at the exact wrong time and won't be able to get over the hump. And so not only do we have to talk about this tournament, I think we have to talk about what happens next. The fact that he was able to come back from this. For anybody like me that had some questions about Sinner after his suspension, to see how he recovered from this match, it's undeniable. Right? Like, even if you have some questions about the suspension, even if you think it's clear and obvious that there's a double standard based on how much revenue somebody generates, which I would argue there is, the product was just so good. And the resilience that he showed to come back from this, it's remarkable. I don't think we've ever seen a more backbreaking loss than this.
Not just in the, it's two contexts, the match and the season.
Yes.
Because Sinner didn't go away. Didn't this match, he gets broken in the next game. That's Alcaraz surging at that point. And but then Sinner makes it, still takes the fourth set's close. It's not a great tie break from Sinner. He starts it well, and then Alcaraz plays amazing. And then Sinner decides, after being behind in the fifth, to keep coming at Alcaraz to get himself back in the match, which he eventually does. And then to follow up what would be a tough loss from those match points, to lose the match and then come back and beat Alcaraz the next time they play in a Wimbledon final in a very similar fashion to how he looked like he was going to win the French. That's a statement. And he's definitely not going away at that point. At that point, he's like, okay, this is not going to break Sinner. It's galvanized him, and he's here to challenge Carlos properly.
This was not a choke from Jannik. And just one moment, I'm just going to close my door. Just a second.
I'll tell you this much. I thought that Carlos Alcaraz had closed the door on Jannik Sinner, but then the rest of the season played out.
Yep.
Just so anyway, this was not a choke from either player at any point. Of course, not Alcaraz in particular, because he wins it. But I'm just watching the 3 championship points again. So he's at love 40 now, Alcaraz, and of course staring down the barrel, as I mentioned as well. The mother in the crowd gets plenty of probably unwanted. 3 hours 44 on the clock. I mean, even if they finished right at this point, 3 hours and 44 is an epic amount of time to spend on the court. And the first serve from Carlos is a pretty good one. He lands it in. That's important. No lacking in bravery, I would still say, though, from Carlos. He's going pretty close to the lines, including one forehand that was pretty epic. And in the end, Jannik goes long with a forehand of his own. I wouldn't say either player won that point or lost it necessarily tactically. I think when Jannik is in that position, he has to go pretty big on that forehand, and he does just go a little bit long. But a few centimeters, and Alcaraz would have had a very tricky backhand, albeit it might have been into the open court. The second championship point that Carlos saves again gets his first serve in, but it's the return from Jannik, which is exactly what he should have done, but he misplaces it and goes long. But Jannik is not, what's the word? He's not being passive in those 2 points. I wouldn't suggest too much. The third one, Let's see if Carlos gets another first serving, because I think he's got first serves in previously. He does. That's pretty clutch as well. A good return. And now Jannik is up in this rally. And this might be the one, but then, yeah, I'm just seeing the third one come and go. And Alcaraz again, millimeters away from going too long on one of those shots. And Sinner probably would be most disappointed with that third one. You might say that the return of serve when he goes long, but anyway, I've said what I want to say about the 3 championship points. Either you two want to add anything, or shall we move on to the latter stages of this match?
I just want to say, go ahead, Nick.
Go, Nick.
I was going to say, let's do set 5.
Go, Zach. Anyway, quickly, go on.
Yeah, I mean, it just the courage to go for the shots that he did. Alcaraz, it is totally normal to play it safe. And the only thing I can compare it to is the moment from Roger Federer's career that he is still the most bitter and angry about, which is Novak Djokovic just saying, I'm going for it, and ripping that return winner at 15-40 or down 40-15 on a championship point. I don't think that we've seen anything. That's the closest comp I've got to what Alcaraz did here. Yeah.
Alcaraz then hits an ace, by the way. So that's 4 good serves in a row, and the 4th of which is an ace. And I think he does an incredible forehand winner on this last point. I'm just trying to remember. I'm just watching it now. Yeah, forehand down the line winner. So 5 points in a row, and they're back on serve incredibly. But then, of course, they're not back on serve. They're not back on serve. That's important to remember. Yeah. Jannik then has a chance to serve it out, but he doesn't serve it out. And yeah, game on, right, Nick?
Pretty much, yeah. Sinner does well at that point. Like, Alcaraz saves it for 5. We then go to a 4th set tiebreak. Sinner does manage to, hold one more serve. He's not completely blown away. He gets a great start to the 4th set tiebreak. He goes 2-0 up, and then Alcaraz wins all the rest of the points. And then it's a case of, right, we're into a 5th. And it's going to be a question of, like, I at this point thought maybe Alcaraz might have the momentum.
Yeah.
After all that.
And he did, right? Because he gets the early break in the 5th.
Very early break.
Hey, question. How many players won 7 straight points against Jannik Sinner this season?
Probably just Alcaraz, right?
Probably. I mean, like, the fact that he won 7 straight points against Sinner, like, that alone is insane. Like, that tiebreaker was insane. And it wasn't even a top 10 crazy thing in this match.
Yeah.
But go on, Nick.
What else was crazy about this match was, moving into the 5th set, Alcaraz gets that early break, and we're like, okay, this is done. And then weirdly, he starts finding it hard to hold serve, and Jannik finds it easier to hold. And Yannick's the one feeling comfortable in the 5th, despite being behind. And it's almost like, don't know whether Alcaraz had an energy crash, like having used so much to steal that 4th and keep himself in the match. Maybe he was getting tight. I don't know. But suddenly it was like, as the finish line got closer, Sinner was getting closer.
Well, if you're Sinner, it's almost like, what do you have to lose at that point? The bad thing already happened, right? Like, you had 3 championship points before serving for the championship. And now here you are, like, screw it, go for broke, right? Like, the bad thing happened to him. And kudos to him for being able, in this match, being able to put it behind him and rally. I mean, that, again, remarkable.
Yeah, indeed. Because it's this time, it's Sinner, as you said, has to come fighting back. It's always been Alcaraz fighting back. Incredible moments, saving championship points, etc. Coming back from breaks down in certain sets like that 4th one. And yet now it's Alcaraz who has all the momentum, and somehow, incredibly, Sinner wrests that momentum back, or at least to get them back on serve in that 5th set. Final couple of games before the tiebreak, I think there's one where, again, Alcaraz is walking a bit of a tightrope. I'd say maybe 30 all on his serve. Nick, around about 5 all, perhaps, something like that.
No, it was
5-6.
Yeah, it was 5. It was, yes, he was serving at 5-6. Like, if he lost that game, he was going to lose. And
I think it gets to 30 all, and I think it might be this point, which is just, there is one point that's mega from Carlos. He's so far down in the rally that I can't believe he ends up winning it. It might be this 30 all point. If it's not this point, it's in this game, I think.
Well, whilst John is trying to get that, I just want to say, like, this is a stat I absolutely love about this match.
Go on.
It sets 2, 3, 4, and 5 the person serving for that set got broken when they were serving for it.
Oh, wow.
Sinner got broken serving for set 2. Alcaraz
Yep.
got broken serving for set 3. Sinner got broken serving for the match in set 4. Alcaraz got broken serving for the match in set 5.
Oh, I forgot that
Wow.
Alcaraz was serving for the match in set
Yeah.
5.
Yeah.
My goodness me, I
That's
forgot
when Sinner
all
broke.
about that. That's
So,
crazy.
gents-
Yeah, 5-3s, 5-3, just like Jannik was sort of an hour and a half before, a bit longer, maybe 2 hours before, or a bit hour and a half before. Wow. And then he gets broken. Yes. So Alcaraz has 2 moments in that set. Was he break up or just one? Yeah, just one break, and he gets all the way to serving for the match.
He gets all the way to 5-3, but he does have 1 or 2 really tough service games that Sinner looked like he might break back in. And at the end of the day, Alcaraz couldn't withhold Sinner's counterattack at 5-3.
Everything at 5 all goes out the window because you try to second. You have a prediction before the match of how you think it's going to be. You keep second guessing yourself throughout, and every time you second guess yourself, you get it wrong. So at 5 all, I think everyone had just given up on trying to imagine how this match would pan out. We do then get to the tiebreak. As I say, Alcaraz has a tough hold as well at 5-6, I think it was, or around about that 5 all, as I mentioned. And we get to the tiebreak.
John, forgive me. Before we get to the tiebreak, it's 1:20, so I have to duck out.
Yeah, I know.
Before I do, I just want to say I remember I think it was the U.S. Open quarterfinal a few years back that ended at like 3 a.m. And one of the things that came up over and over again in the commentary is we're going to see this match in finals. We're going to see this matchup in major finals. And it was at that point, it was almost aspirational. Right. We wanted that. Nothing is guaranteed in life and certainly not in tennis. And when you think about the level they reached in that match, and it was like, whoa, like we've just never seen these guys like this at this level for this sustained amount of time. And the level that led up to this 5th set tiebreaker, it was like it was eons above that US Open quarterfinal.
And that was so good.
That world on fire.
Yeah.
And with that, gentlemen, enjoy the recap of the 5th set tiebreaker. It was such a pleasure as always, and I hope, Nick, that we get to call about 100 more matches like this, but I'll settle for 1 or 2.
Thanks, Zach.
Later, guys.
Cheers. Okay, 5th set tiebreak. My money was probably still slightly on Alcaraz, although I've just said I wouldn't be making any more predictions. Although, of course, I know how this pans out. Does the 5th set tiebreak, though, Nick? Does it affect the magnitude of the match? As in, it wasn't 10-8, 11-9, even 10-7 or something epic like that. Alcaraz races into a 6-0 lead, I think, something like that. And it really, and then from that moment, I think he eventually gets over the line, winning it 10-2.
Yeah, I think it might have been 7-0 actually. So yes and no is the answer. Yes, in that, the score of that tiebreak was one-sided, and you don't get that same crescendo that you, say the other match I would choose, the 2008 Wimbledon final had, where like Rafa still had to tough out that last service game.
Exactly, gets to choose. The darkness is falling and all sorts. Yeah,
to get over the line. You don't have that for the Australian Open final of 2012, where Novak is literally praying to convert match point. So you don't have that crescendo in the same way of it could still go either way. What I will say is that the reason why it doesn't undercut the match is because the level Carlos played in that tiebreak was insane. He played pretty much the perfect match tiebreak exactly when he needed it against an opponent who demanded perfection. Because you can watch that tiebreak back. Sinner doesn't do a lot wrong. Alcaraz just rips shot after shot after shot. The match point where he converts is a brilliant running forehand, which is just perfect for highlight reels to show that he won an epic match. Carlos Alcaraz was just too damn good in that tiebreak. And regardless of whether you think, it's a little bit disappointing it wasn't more competitive, you can't help but applaud how good he was. And that match deserved the person getting over the line to play that well to finish the job. So that's why I don't think the scoreline affects it that much.
This is how I view it, Nick. I see this match just getting better and better and better, and the championship points and the quality and the drama, 5 sets, Grand Slam final, the occasion. It basically ticks every single box to be in that greatest of all time category, whether you place it somewhere in the top 10, the top 5, or even higher. And what you do with that, though, is you're sort of, you're suddenly sort of, if you wanted to, you could just suddenly put it up on the list. It begins at obviously, nowhere near it. Then just every set that goes past and every point at certain moments, it sort of elevates itself onto the next rung of the ladder, especially once it goes 5. But I will say this, it probably keeps elevating itself, and then it probably hits a ceiling for me, 2, 3, 4, something like that in the greatest of all time. If that 5th set tiebreak had been epic, not just in terms of quality, as you say, I think Alcaraz's quality was just too good in the end, and especially that final point, as you highlight. If it had have had another championship point save, and it doesn't matter if it's Sinner saving it, Alcaraz winning it, if there'd been a net cord or something like that as well, or just something, even if the quality dipped perhaps, but had some extra drama. But with Carlos racing into that lead, and as good as you mentioned, especially that running forehand, Carlos must have been feeling pretty good at 9-2 in that tiebreak. I would have thought that means he can go for that after his forehand there and feel quite good about it. And yes, he pulls it off, but it's not him hitting that running forehand to save a championship point and then ultimately win the match. So actually, for me, I think it would actually be. I think would have a much stronger case and a stronger argument. Those 2 matches you just highlighted, by the way, Nadal, Djokovic. And I mean, Nadal was up a break, wasn't he, in the 5th? Now, I know you would say the same, but he was very close to the finish line there at 4-2. And he has a pretty good, easy backhand that unfortunately he hits into the tram lines. And that match slips away. Equally, as you say, Rafa serving it out in the darkness, and they would have had to have just finished it. And he was, points either way. So, I mean, it wasn't a 5th set tiebreak because they didn't have those at Wimbledon in those days. But it was 9-7 and deuce. And that would have eventually had to have called time. So that was those 2 matches were on a knife edge until the absolute last point, I would argue.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's my assessment as well of it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that, I think what I would say is the tie break in this does not stop it from being in the greatest match of all time conversation.
Yeah.
But when we're making our own subjective judgments, it does have an impact on what we put first, which, even if you're comparing it to the 80 Borg McEnroe, which some of our older fans will probably be like, can somebody please throw that in the mix?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, deservedly so. It was revered for decades until Federer and Nadal happened. I think you and I probably feel similarly. If you asked us as part of this, what is the greatest men's tennis match of all time? It's the 2008 Wimbledon final, right?
Yeah. And I think Borg McEnroe is probably just ahead of this as well. And then, you might put Nadal, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, 2012. You might not. And it's in the conversation. I just think that you have another weapon. If you were campaigning for this to be the greatest match of all time, you'd have another weapon that I think would beat down. Whereas right now, the other opponent has a weapon of some sort. But listen, unbelievable match. The way both players within the match recovered, and the way both players at various points in the season thereafter recovered as well. I mean, Jannik, I thought would have a hangover, and he did, in my opinion, going into Halle, which is the next tournament, and he loses to Bublik there, a very, very capable opponent on grass. But I did just feel, and it's just a feeling, I haven't even heard Jannik say one way or the other. What I will say is that by Wimbledon, though, whatever the word is, not cobwebs, but the after effects, the hangover, etc., had been blown away, and he obviously goes on to win the title there. That could easily have knocked Carlos, by the way, especially the way that match turned out at Wimbledon. I think Jannik was just the better player for 4 sets even. I think Carlos pulled the first set out of the bag, and Carlos was asking his team in the 4th set at Wimbledon that day, like, what can I do? I'm not winning these like baseline rallies, and I don't really have any answers. So again, Carlos then recovers from that, doesn't need to go on and take the US Open. And then Jannik recovers from that to go on and win the ATP Tour finals in many ways. And the head-to-head, of course, shakes up right now at the end of the season as 10-6 in Carlos's favor. But Jannik has at least stemmed that, what was it? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches in a row for Carlos. I think he was 4-3 down And then after this one had gone 8-4 ahead, and maybe Jannik might have been thinking, well, how and where and when can I ever beat this guy? And 3 or 4 weeks later, he was doing just that at SW19.
He was. And yeah, that's, just what we were talking about earlier with Zach about sort of how he bounced back after this match and after that loss. I think you have to credit Grigor Dimitrov for waking him up a little bit. I don't think he raised his level until he nearly lost.
Got that.
And then I think that's where Jannik woke up and brought his best. I think it's interesting, right, with the way the season panned out, because since this match, whenever Alcaraz and Sinner have played each other, everyone's going, are we going to get another French Open final? Yeah, that was the thing. Like, probably less so as each match progressed, but you had Wimbledon, which I would argue was a decent 4-set match. I quite enjoyed that match.
Yeah.
The Cincinnati Open was a dud. Like, Sinner retired from that match. It doesn't really count. It does count for the head-to-head, but it shouldn't. And then you've got US Open, which was a Carlos masterclass, other than one set from Sinner when he manages to steal one and get in there. And then the ATP finals, which I think was probably their second best match of the year. I think that was a really competitive straight sets match where they were going either way. I would have said I would have actually said, could we consider it for one of the best matches we've had all year, to be honest, even though it was straight sets. But I think what was interesting is that now, going back to what you were saying about the defining moment of this match being those saved championship points in the fourth set. That was the difference between this being a good match and a great match. Because if Sinner had converted, we'd gone, well, that was a really good 4-set match, and matches can be really great 4-setters. And we got that at Wimbledon, like their next time they played. Like, this match was this close to playing exactly how Wimbledon did.
Very similar, yeah.
But for some bravery from Carlos and maybe Sinner getting tight, but we don't.
Maybe
whatever happening.
I think Sinner was personally, Nick, sorry to interrupt. I actually think Sinner was maybe just a little tighter when he was trying to serve it out than on those return games. I on the return game and those return points, he's loved 40, and I don't think Jannik did a lot wrong. Yes, maybe that very attackable serve I mentioned, he goes long on it, but he does attack it. It's not like he bottles out of attacking it and just settles for a rally. So it's actually probably even more me personally. I think that psychological blow, and I'd love to hear his response to this question, but I would love to know did the psychological blow, and probably it did, the psychological blow of losing 5 points in a row and 3 championship points have an impact on you? Because then they sit down for a change of ends, don't they, as well? And maybe even that makes it even worse for Jannik, because he's then got another minute or so to think about what's just gone on. So yeah, does that have an effect on you then trying to serve it out at 5-4? I think it does. I was also just looking at their head-to-head, and I think they've had 4 now matches of absolutely just awesome proportions, as in like conversations at the end of the year, either number 1, number 2, number 3 matches of the year. One of them was that US Open 5-setter. I think it. So I've been doing these now. I think it's the end of the 3rd year of doing that. So 2020 or fourth season actually of doing it. And every year there's an Alcaraz Sinner, match pretty much, or very close to it in the conversation. Sinner Alcaraz, I think in 2022 was the 2nd best match of the year, at least as far as we were concerned on Talking Tennis, albeit some maybe even have suggested it was better than Nadal, Medvedev that particular year. Then they had the Beijing one in 2024, which was just an incredible match, which actually was our number 1 last year. There's this one as well, which is a 5-setter. And I said there was a 4th one.
Miami 2023?
Which one in 2023?
Miami. Sinner beat Alcaraz in a thrilling 3-setter in Miami.
Yeah, that Miami one was just probably those 3 that I just mentioned. I think are actually in the absolute unbelievable levels where you just can't believe the shot making that's going on. The Miami one is also like that. There's an epic rally that's every now and again when it's like points of the year or points of the decade or whatever. There's a particular point that they show in that one. I'm not sure how many shots it was, but you just can't believe that. I think it's Jannik who ends up winning that point with a passing shot. Although that's probably in the next level down, that Miami one, but it's possibly in the conversation as being one of their matches. And yeah, long way to continue. But we're looking at a strike rate of around about 1 in 3 matches, 1 in 4 matches that these guys play we are just like going, is this the greatest match of all time? Or is this the greatest match of the year? And that's how good it is watching these two come up against each other.
That is how good it is. That's what we had when we had Federer and Nadal in the 2000s. They were playing match of the year at least once a year, and then the others were not quite living up to it. Think about Miami 2005, Rome 2006, Wimbledon 2007, Wimbledon 2008, Australian Open 2009.
True.
That run that happened between those two, and then it switched to being more about Nadal and Djokovic, I think.
Yeah, also with Nadal Federer, there was either injury or form. Nadal would go away for 18 months, 2 years, if you like, in terms of his form, about 15, 16. Likewise, Federer as well, maybe sort of 13, 14, 15. And there was also obviously a few injuries. Rafa in 2010, sort of, that put him out of Wimbledon, and of course in the French Open in 2000. So there was, 2009. 2009. You're absolutely right. He misses Wimbledon. He wins it in 2010. Where was Federer that year in 20? What happened to him in 2010?
2010. Federer just went off the boil in the middle of the year because he lost to Soderling in the French Open quarters. He lost to Berdych in the Wimbledon quarters, and then he had
a loss I'm missing. Right.
A few painful defeats to Djokovic in 5 sets from match point up or whatever in 2010. So, that's where he was, but he kind of came back towards. He had a great start to the season, had a great end to 2010. But then after that, it switched to Djokovic and Nadal because you then had their rivalry throughout 2011 and some of the matches they played, maybe like Miami, something like that. Then you had 2012, the Australian Open final, 2013, that French Open match they had, 2014, kind of Rome Roland Garros was pretty good. Then Nadal goes away for a couple of years, comes back. That's what we... And that's what we've got to look forward to with these two. Like, they're going to be playing an epic match a year, and the others they play will be pretty good. And I think we're going to do pretty well with that. And we're going to get a lot out of it. Although, it has to be said, it does sound like a lot of their best matches happen on hard courts, just to go back on what Zach was saying.
I heard what Zach had to say, and maybe that's recency bias. I mean, it's obviously 7-8 months ago, but maybe he just loves the clay. I am looking forward to these guys having an epic 5-setter at Wimbledon some point in their careers, and the fives. I find it unbelievable how they move on hard courts, like mere mortals do on clay, if you like, in terms of the sliding and stuff. One more question before we end this. Just looking forward in the pretty short term, because about 5 weeks from now, we'll be getting underway down under. Are we going to get a Sinner Alcaraz final? And who would, assuming they just get there in a normal-ish way, who would be the favorite to win that?
I genuinely don't know. I think, on paper, you would say Jannik Sinner. Yeah. Because he's won the last couple of years of the Australian Open.
Yeah.
But then you would have said Carlos Alcaraz was favourite at Wimbledon because he won the last couple of years of Wimbledon.
True, similar.
And it might be, but also Sinner's Australian Open record is far better than Carlos's.
I do hope that's the only slam they've not played at, I think.
Yes,
they've played French a couple of times. They've played at the US Open quarterfinals. They've played Wimbledon final. So, yes, the only slam.
Wimbledon final this year was... No, they played Wimbledon once before.
Wimbledon 2022 as well,
Yeah. So... But then it'd be Carlos's turn to win one. Like, if they keep bouncing back against each other after each loss, Carlos is going to be coming back at Sinner after the ATP finals loss. He's obviously looking to be the youngest man to win the career Grand Slam, and to potentially get youngest man to get to 7 slams potentially. So, big things on the line there. So, I genuinely don't know. I think it'll be an exciting match. I think it'll probably go 4, at least. I guess if I have to go for, I think the weight's slightly more in Sinner's favour, but not that much. Like Carlos winning it would be his turn. And I feel like my head's saying Sinner, my heart's saying Carlos. That's basically how I feel about the Australian Opens.
I'm going Sinner I'm going for a Sinner Alcaraz final right now, but lots can happen in the next 4 or 5 weeks in terms of, well, they probably won't be playing a lot, if any, tennis, because I think neither of them will be playing a warm-up.
They're doing an exhibition warm-up.
They'll do an exhibition. But, of course, we'll see how the paths pan out. And if Carlos leaks sets, as he can do, but he didn't do it, of course, in New York. But I would back Jannik for both. To get to the final, I feel even just right now, I'm thinking, yeah, he's probably in the final. Carlos has never even made a semi-final there before, although I do think right now, again, without even seeing the draw, etc., would back him to get to the final. But I'm more confident that Jannik gets to the final than Carlos. And primarily is why I would go for Jannik to win the title over Carlos. If they end up in the final against each other, I probably still would, just without seeing anything, back Jannik Sinner. But that is to come, Nick. Fingers crossed we can get more and more of these epic matches between these two. In fact, I say fingers crossed. I almost feel like it's just inevitable. I think I'd be surprised if we go 3 or 4 matches in a row that are duds. Basically,
it's guaranteed. The only question is where. Where's tennis next? Is it Wimbledon?
Australia would be a great one to tick off. You know, we talked about some of the classics and legends before, and as I was saying, you know, Sinner, Alcaraz, Australia never met, it's only slam they haven't met. They've already ticked off all the other 3 slams of meeting each other and often producing. And yet, of course, we never got a Nadal Federer match in New York. Incredible how that just never happened. And of course, we were just 1 point away, I think, on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah, Novak Djokovic didn't want that to happen.
Thwarting that, thwarting Fred primarily. All right, big thanks, Nick, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, John. This was great fun.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.